My mother unloaded the burden of her quarrels and the daily dose of indignity that she had to endure onto my brother and me. We were the only safe harbor she had. Her temper, already bad, became irrational and uncontrollable. I found it impossible to predict or gauge what would anger her and what would please her. I had to pick my way through that minefield without a map. My feet and fingers, and sometimes even my head, were often blown off, but after floating around untethered for a while, they would magically reattach themselves. When she got angry with me, she would mimic my way of speaking. She was a good mimic and made me sound ridiculous to myself. I clearly remember everything about every instance she did that, even what I was wearing. It felt as though she had cut me out, cut my shape out of a picture book with a sharp pair of scissors and then tore me up. The first time it happened was on our way home from Madras, where we had been for 2 weeks. Her older sister, Mrs. Joseph, had asked if my mother could look after her 3 children while she and her husband were away on holiday. The same Mrs. Joseph whose house I would years later ask the auto rickshaw driver in Delhi to take me to. My mother agreed. She must have felt that she would, at least nominally, be earning her keep while she was there. Unlike the quarrelsome Imanum cosmopolitans, Mrs. Joseph had a proper husband, who was a pilot for Indian Airlines, proper children, and a proper house with servants. Mrs. Joseph was acutely conscious of the fact that in these matters she had succeeded where her siblings had failed. She was good looking, with a high, smug voice that matched her starched ironed saris and her neat hairstyle. She had a tight, knowing smile and always sounded as though she were confiding in the person she was talking to. There was no resembl- there was no resemblance at all, neither physical nor temperamental, between her and my mother. When Mrs. Joseph came back from her holiday, the sisters had a terrible spat about something. We returned to Kerala the next day by plane. My aunt's pilot husband had a quota of free tickets. We hadn't been in a plane before. Once we were seated, intending to conduct a reasonable adult conversation as should be conducted by co passengers on an aeroplane, I asked my mother how, if Mrs. Joseph was her real sister, was Mrs. Joseph so thin? My mother turned on me in a rage and mimicked me. I felt myself shrinking from my own skin and draining away, swirling like water down a sink until I was gone. Then she said, "By the time you're my age, you will be 3 times my size." I knew I had said something terrible, but I wasn't sure what. I was too young for fat and thin to be value judgments. It was only years later, when the incident played over in my mind, as it often does, and when I managed to think about it clearly without dwelling on my own feelings, that I finally realized how hurtful what I said must have been. What really, you know, what really drew me to this book is about how a daughter can write about her mother with such detachment, right? Because as children, we're always so embroiled in the uh, emotional tides of our relationship with our parents. Either we're too bitter, or we're too defensive, or we're too angry. Everything is so extreme. And what really fascinates me about Arundhati Roy's, almost chronicling about her relationship with her mother, is how she really writes about it with a detachment of a of an observer, of a witness, you know, just chronicling the facts about how her mother was without any bias, any sort of bitterness, with a rare quality of detachment, and that's a mindset I would want to cultivate. And that's what makes this book a page turner.